Jaime-Jin Lewis was part of a fellowship where she interviewed over 100 families, asking questions like,
hey, what's the most stressful part of your month? What is something you just wish was taken off your plate?
Childcare kept coming up. She asked,
what do you do in those moments when your childcare arrangement falls through?
The first iteration of Jaime-Jin's product, Wiggle Room, was a solution to that problem. It helped parents build a care circle in advance.
In the moment of crisis, they would press a button, and then we would just send a very simple text to their circle.
Park Slope, Brooklyn, today, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., 3-year-old and 6-year-old siblings.
Then, in January 2020, COVID-19 made childcare even more complicated.
I remember calling some of the moms that we were working with and saying, hey, do you have backup childcare? What would you do if your kid's school closed?
Why are you even asking me this? You're stressing me out.
When schools closed in New York City, Jaime-Jin pivoted. She set up a hotline called Workers Need Childcare and spun up a mutual aid program called Care Together NYC to fund childcare providers.
After 2020, we had all of this data about care requests as well as care supply. I also wanted to understand what was going on with childcare providers themselves.
Serving childcare providers is what the current iteration of Wiggle Room does.
Wiggle Room is back-end daycare operations simplified. We take all of the complex and confusing rules and regulations that daycares have to comply with, and we put them into simple workflows that any person who's running a daycare can easily manage.
With Jaime-Jin's tool Auto-Enroll, she's working to build a durable and dynamic childcare system, ensuring that all communities have access to quality, affordable childcare. Hey, I'm your host, Nicole Jarbo, and this is Pitch Playground from 4.0. This season, we're hearing from 10 entrepreneurs who are reimagining the future of learning. They get the opportunity to pitch their ideas to funders. Today, Jaime-Jin pitches her idea to Jin-Soo Huh from the Learning Accelerator.
I'm curious about sustainability in the future and what your 5-year plan is as you think about growing.
From June 15th to June 30th, 2025, you'll have an opportunity to vote for the idea you think deserves to win $50,000. Remember to vote. Share some of your earliest education memories that maybe have kind of shaped your philosophy around education.
I was raised in the American South, in South Carolina and Virginia. I was raised in, the segregated South. Even in the 80s, there was a lot of racial segregation. It was a predominantly multi-generational Black and multi-generational white community. And me, I was the only Asian kid for a long time and one of a very small minority when there were other Asian kids around. I saw how kids were treated differently based on the color of their skin.
The environment of the high school Jaime-Jin attended was racially segregated.
My high school, still to this day, has 2 cafeterias. It has what was historically a Black cafeteria and a white cafeteria. And I would carry my lunch tray between different cafeterias because there never felt like there was a space for me. Now, the cops were only in Courtyard and Cafeteria B. And the Cafeteria A and Courtyard A were closer to the enrichment programs and the nicer part of the school.
And I'm curious, do you have any sort of influences from your family around how you think about education and opportunity?
The values in my house were really around community. I, in fact, was not allowed to take advanced classes because my mom thought that, A, I was a little kid and carrying the heavy textbooks would physically hurt me. She's just kids shouldn't be carrying around 40 pounds of books all the time. She did not really believe in too much homework. In fact, I wasn't really allowed to do homework until high school because she really believed that I should be out playing outside, that I should be out meeting other people in my community, that I should be helping, participating. My parents had a very rich social life, so there was always we're going to go help, Mrs. Smith down the street unclog her sink, and then we're going to go take a casserole to the Johnsons who, someone was in the hospital. It was just really community focused. And so they really believed that anything that happened at school needed to kind of fit around the values of community first.
A big influence on Jaime-Jin's trajectory was her mom, Mrs. Donna, who was an early childhood educator.
My mother ran a small preschool program out of the basement of our church. She actually got into it because it's the program that I attended, and then she really flourished there as like a parent volunteer. Despite not having formal training around this, my mother is just a person who's like so gifted with young people. She went on to teach there for 30 years. She educated over 450 3-year-olds. So let that sink in. And she's just a person who can bring like limitless curiosity to the things that a 3-year-old cares about. Like the banana they had for breakfast that they just want to talk about, or the banana that they didn't have that their sibling got. Teach them the importance of sharing their favorite toy, of waiting in line at the water fountain. When the kids are first coming on their first day of school, they're really scared or sad or afraid of leaving their parent. And so my mom will like stand at the door and like write them a little song to make them excited about coming to school. After school, I would get off the bus and then it would be like, okay, we gotta go over and like wipe down the table, vacuum the teeny tiny chairs, stack the chairs, clean up the Legos, cut out shapes for the craft the next day. That was my whole childhood.
What does it feel like to kind of reflect on the fact that your mom has been so instrumental in this developmental phase of hundreds of young people's lives?
I'm incredibly proud. My mother is definitely not only the matriarch of our family, she's like the matriarch of our community. Whenever we go to the grocery store, we pull up to Kroger or Food Lion, we don't let her out of the car because if she goes into the grocery store, it will take her 2 hours because every aisle she'll see a kiddo or a grown-up, someone who is now, 30 and has their own kid. She's taught generations of families. It's very inspiring, and I feel very grateful to have been raised in this way and by someone who's so loving and caring.
Care has certainly become a through line in Jaime-Jin's career. After high school, she studied architecture, worked in a bunch of restaurants, spent 2 years in Argentina, and a brief stint in San Francisco before finding herself in New York working in restaurants. That's when her work in care really started to take off.
I ended up meeting this woman named Miriam Fogelson, and she worked at this organization that actually worked on de facto segregation in schools. And so I was like, wow, this really resonates with me.
The work felt deeply connected to the experiences Jaime-Jin had growing up.
And I was able to say that I contributed to young people actually getting the tools that I wished I had had as a young person.
In 2015, Jaime-Jin had the opportunity to work at the National Domestic Workers Alliance on a campaign called Caring Across Generations.
And that campaign was specifically looking at how families were being squeezed by caregiving, the economics of caregiving responsibilities. So this is elder care, child care, and care for loved ones with disabilities.
Caregiving is essential. Whether paid or unpaid, it supports the broader economy and contributes significantly to health, education, and employment outcomes. Yet it remains undervalued despite offering high returns. And caregiving responsibilities continue to fall disproportionately on women. We know how vital care is. How do we ensure every family has access to affordable, reliable childcare?
We were piloting a lot of different programs in different states, looking at, okay, what do families need? Is it just cash assistance? Is it cash assistance that's tied to the caregiver? Is it cash assistance that pays for a paid caregiver? Looking at all of the different players in this equation and figuring out how, just testing different ways to support a family, which ones most alleviated that burden, give you the greatest return on investment.
While Jaime-Jin was at Caring Across Generations, she was also advising on a fellowship at Blue Ridge Labs in Brooklyn.
And so the year that I was advising, it was on aging. The next year, the fellowship was on childcare in working families. So the structure of the fellowship is you have 2 months to do a bunch of research. I was really grateful because we got to just interview families, and I got to ask over 100 families, hey, what's the most stressful part of your month? What is something you just wish was taken off your plate? Childcare kept coming up, and we got to ask, hey, what do you do in those moments when your childcare arrangement falls through? And we got to learn that they sometimes did nothing, lived in denial, hoped it worked itself out. Often in the 11th hour, they would send a Hail Mary text that's really emotional to a handful of friends or maybe a neighbor or a sister to see if someone could help out, and then wait. And that fellowship is actually where Wiggle Room was born.
The first iteration of Wiggle Room was a parent-facing product. They would help parents build their care circle, a community that could support families with childcare requests.
In the moment of crisis, they would press a button, and then we would just send a very simple text to their circle.
Park Slope, Brooklyn, today, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., 3-year-old and 6-year-old siblings.
And it would always be multiple choice, yes, no, or I need more information.
Wiggle Room empowered families to have backups in place for childcare. Jaime-Jin had a pilot of 50 moms and received a small grant to support it. Then, in January 2020, they started hearing word of something called COVID-19.
I remember calling some of the moms that we were working with and saying, hey, do you have backup childcare? What would you do if your kid's school closed? And they were like,
why are you even asking me this? You're stressing me out.
One woman threatened to punch me through the phone. So I think 10 days after that call, Broadway shut down, the school shut down here in New York. And so I just was in the WhatsApp group, trying to give people information. They're like, do I have to go to work? Does my kid go to school? My toddler's daycare is still open. Can they still go to that? So I was just texting a whole bunch of parents that week. I call one of my advisors. I'm like, okay, well, we're supposed to be doing this pilot. I had a really great advisor who was like,
Jaime-Jin, this is an unprecedented global pandemic. Do what people need to be of service, and if we all survive this thing, we'll figure out what's going on with Wiggle Room after that.
Great advice, important advice. I called my friends, and I called as many people as I know who spoke different languages, and I was like, can you help me help these families figure out how to navigate childcare right now? And so within 2 weeks, by the end of March 2020, we had set up a hotline. It was called Workers Need Childcare.
When a family called or texted, they would be assigned a volunteer who would work with them until they found a childcare arrangement that worked. That's how Jaime-Jin spent 2020. But she wasn't ready to stop there.
After 2020, we had all of this data about care requests as well as care supply. I also wanted to understand what was going on with childcare providers themselves.
Jaime-Jin decided to phone up these providers.
There are 6,000 licensed home-based programs in New York City, and I actually called all of them. I probably only talked to about 500, but I called all of them and I said, what are you all doing? And I was so surprised to hear that 9 out of 10 of them stayed open every single day. That they said,
I'm not getting paid, but children are coming to my program every day.
The 6,000 largely women of color who run daycare businesses out of their home stayed open. They stayed open and they went above and beyond.
She started a mutual aid program called Care Together NYC to help pay these providers. They ran it on Instagram and moved $153,000 in 4 weeks. It felt personal for Jaime-Jin, given the work her mother, Mrs. Donna, did for their community.
I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this is basically what my mom did. This looks just like the setup that my mom had. They're vibrant places. They're in really small spaces, but they're really vibrant places. There's a library, there's a cooking corner, there's a craft corner, there's a sand table. There's it's an educational space that's full of love.
As Jaime-Jin engaged with these providers, she learned that the business operations involved in running a daycare were creating an additional burden for many of them.
They're the CEO, they're the COO, they're the CMO, they're their own admin, they're the cook, they're the custodian, and they're also providing the educational services. They're the lead teacher.
Alleviating the administrative burden involved in running a daycare is what the current iteration of Wiggle Room does.
Wiggle Room is back-end daycare operations simplified. We take all of the complex and confusing rules and regulations that daycares have to comply with, and we put them into simple workflows that any person who's running a daycare can easily manage.
With Wiggle Room's tool, Auto-Enroll, providers have an app that allows them to seamlessly navigate the complex maze of regulations they have to comply with.
There's a 58-page book of regulations they have to adhere to at all times, and it's not super clear. And these are the pieces that just feel like a never-ending snowball of work for daycare operators. And so that's really where we come in, and we try to make it as transparent as possible. And we actually build systems. Our tools right now are interfaceless, so they actually just run in the background. We can ask the provider what they need, or if we need something from a family, they can scan a QR code and fill something out. But they aren't logging in or building a Salesforce or building a HubSpot or all of these other tools that they just are not going to use.
Something Jaime-Jin learned at Blue Ridge Labs Fellowship that still rings true today is that to build the right tools, you need to deeply listen to your users.
Test every idea. Building things that you think other people need is a sure way to not build what anybody actually needs.
These are some of the providers and childcare advocates that Jaime-Jin has listened to as she built Auto-Enroll.
I'm Shamik Sellers, owner and operator of Legacy House Preschool based in Chesterfield, Virginia. I was very prepared to offer amazing childcare early education services, but I was not prepared for the business portion of being an entrepreneur.
My name is Amy Shea. I work at the Low Income Investment Fund. I'm the Early Care and Education Program Manager in New York. I think that a lesson that providers learn the hard way is how important a budget is from year to year. You know, you can plan, you can project for things. I think that you have a better understanding of what you're spending and why.
My name is Sierra Oliver, and I am a family childcare quality coach with Tennessee Childcare Resource and Referral. Read your rules and regulations. Those are your best friends, and keep that book with you.
With Auto-Enroll, providers can be more efficient.
I'm Karitha Boyd, and I'm the owner of K's Cup Family Daycare located in Brooklyn, New York. Paperwork was bombarding my desk, my life, and I needed something that was going to minimize that, and Auto-Enroll did that for me. Your desk is clearer, your life and your brain cells are clearer. So yes, definitely take.
But Auto-Enroll doesn't just make the process of enrolling in childcare easier for providers. It helps parents too. In one case, a provider called Jaime-Jin's team because she had a parent who was worried she would need to take time off work to pick up enrollment paperwork for her child.
And so we were able to set her up with our tool, Auto-Enroll. She was able to send all the paperwork digitally to the parent. The parent could fill it out wherever they were. And the moment they hit submit, everything was filed away for the parent and the provider. And the kid could start care the next day.
As of right now, Jaime-Jin has 65 daycare contracts.
We have 100% usage. And I think that that's really what I'm most proud of. For 90% of our users, we are the first piece of technology and the first business tool that they adopt into their program.
If you win the 50K, what are you using it for?
We are expanding statewide, and right now we're still largely focused in New York. So $50,000 would enable us to do anchor events across the state and really build community kind of outside of New York City and get wiggle room into more programs across New York State.
Now, Jaime-Jin is going to have an opportunity to pitch her idea to Jin-Soo Huh.
I'm excited to be back on the Pitch Playground. I'm a partner at the Learning Accelerator. We're a national nonprofit that figures out how do we help the sector learn faster.
Jin-Soo is going to dive deep into the business of wiggle room and Auto-Enroll. We'll explore key questions Jaime-Jin will need to consider as she continues to grow her business. What does a durable and dynamic childcare system actually mean? What is the user experience of the tool? How does Jaime-Jin find her customers? What will be the challenges of expanding to new states? Here's their conversation.
We know that childcare is such a hard thing in this country. We know that it's not an easy thing to provide and it's expensive. I wanted to start off by asking, on your website, your vision is building a durable and dynamic childcare system. Could you share a little bit about why is that important and what does that mean?
So we know that care happens every day, every minute of every day in a young person's life. Parents are often providing this labor many times for free. It's a very undervalued industry. Many families, even families that are very well off, are still cobbling together solutions. The infrastructure itself has really just been overlooked and it hasn't gotten a lot of attention. And I just realized there's so much opportunity to support this industry, but we need to do it in a way that works for them, that honors their own strengths, but doesn't create a mountain of more paperwork. We need to start equipping these businesses to run more efficiently. And so that's where I just started looking for opportunities to support in the tactical, behind the scenes ways. So that's my kind of long-winded answer to how I see contributing to a more durable and dynamic care system.
Can you tell me a little bit about Auto-Enroll and just walk me through how does it work? Like walk me through the childcare side and also from the parents' experience.
I don't know if you've ever enrolled in a childcare program. You typically get that pack of papers that you have to fill out. Maybe you have to fill out your child's name and date of birth 17 times. You have to fill out your own phone number like 6 times at least. You have to go find your auntie's phone number. You have to go find your neighbor's phone number. So how it works for the provider is that we have a 15-minute, and honestly, it's really like 8 to 10 minutes, intake form. In that intake form, we ask them all the questions that we need to know to build their enrollment system. These are all things that we pulled from the state regulations and mapped to the forms that they'll need for a parent to fill out when they enroll. And we put it into a simple multiple choice survey. And then this is my favorite part. That doesn't live behind a login or anything like that. We literally mail them a physical poster with a QR code on it. And then the parent, their experience is that they scan the code or they click on the link and it opens up into a mobile-first form that they can fill out on their phone. They can fill it out on a computer. It takes parents typically less than 10 minutes to enroll. The minute that they hit submit on that form, the provider gets a complete packet of all of the forms that they need to stay in compliance.
I think that anybody who's listening could probably resonate with filling out forms and being like, I just filled this number out already, like this phone number, like, why are you asking me over and over again? And I think that, I think the best ways, like when you see technology work is to your point, when you're able to save time so that you're able to form these human connections and like actually focus on the work on there. And what I'm hearing is just really lowering the barrier for people to enter. And then also for these businesses to just be more efficient and just be like, hey, we just want to provide childcare. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide that versus spending hours and hours of work of enrolling on here.
Yeah. No one starts a program because they're like, I really want to do paperwork every Saturday and Sunday. Like, I really just want my weekends to be filled with really tedious paperwork. No.
I'm curious though, like right now you're in New York City and you've mentioned there's so many providers out there. Like, how are you getting the word out?
Honestly, it's been a lot of trying things, failing at things, trying again. But I've probably done almost every outreach under the sun. What we did in New York City was we first started with providers. I wanted to build this with the people who were going to use it and literally vet every single piece by them. Also, shout out to my mother. And I also test every single thing by her. And if she can't figure out what to do or what something means or read the text on a button, it's got to change. We take it seriously to build with community because we want to be the most user-friendly tool on the market. There's different Yelp or other childcare marketplaces that people are kind of on or their data's on. There's sometimes state lists, but there are WhatsApp groups. And there is typically a matriarch in a geographic area. And they have these beautiful and robust WhatsApp groups where they talk about these really technical questions. So I try to find those and build as authentic relationships. Say, hey, do you all have any events coming up? Can we sponsor a breakfast? Can we just show up? What are you trying to do in your city or in your town? Can we just show up and just show support? And that really goes far to build trust. And again, I think that's a really big barrier that many tech solutions are going to have to many companies are going to have to overcome if they want to connect with this industry. We do run ads on social media. So yes, we're going to be at their local block party. We're going to be in the WhatsApp group offering as much support as we can. And we're going to try to add value additive, like social media posts, checklists, things that they can use, tips, guides, just stories of success and support. We want to put those on social media so they're also seeing us there.
I'm curious about sustainability in the future and what your 5-year plan is as you think about growing and making sure that this is a service that can be provided in the future.
I consider Auto-Enroll our initial use case, and we really wanted to test a few basic assumptions. One, does this industry actually want technology? I had this idea, hey, we can help folks, but nobody had really built a tool that they're using yet, so we didn't know. It was very risky. Second, their ability to pay. So I didn't want to give it away for free.
Jaime-Jin's currently offering her product for $200 a year, with a setup fee that ranges from $99 to $199.
I'm trying to build a business, and I know for us to stay around and continue to provide these services, we need to charge. And so the pricing that we arrived at was really, again, I just made calls to about 50 daycares. I pitched them and I said, what would you pay for this? And I got some higher numbers, I got some lower numbers, but it really helped me kind of ground my pricing strategy in what my target users would actually be willing to pay for. In terms of longer-term sustainability, we are definitely looking at feature expansion, geographic expansion, of course. And then while we're not necessarily looking, quote unquote, up market to centers or schools, we do have some that have reached out that we are working with. We're in conversations with networks of providers. So that's really what we're looking at. And, we've run the numbers and it does get us to a pretty sustainable place as a business.
Are there any specific locality considerations in terms of policies that you have to consider, or is it kind of all under New York State?
In terms of expanding, we're actually looking at expanding to 2 other states in the coming year. Many of the regulations are largely established by a state agency, and then sometimes municipalities have additional ones. There's many similarities state to state, but it does take, nuance to figure out exactly what regulations apply to which geographies.
Now, Jin-Soo is going to distill some final advice for Jaime-Jin to consider.
I love that you have such a very clear hypotheses that you're testing. I love that you knew the industry so well intimately with family and just got to know going straight to these folks to ask what is it that you really need? Does it work? I think that co-building is so strong. And I also love that you just had these hypotheses that you're will folks use technology? We're actually not sure. So let's first figure that out. And then also working with them to figure out the price point. But I love that you're just talking with them, and love that you have your mom as a test subject to be able to say, can you figure this tech out? No, not helpful? Great. Then we're going to try something else. That's, I think, incredible, and love that you're doing that on there. It is such a hard industry in terms of going almost door to door and finding these folks. And I think you're doing a great job of in the industry that you're in, finding influencers with the matriarchs and WhatsApp. I think it's great that you're doing Instagram ads and that you're on the ground, but clearly you can't go to every block party in the country. That's going to be hard at a certain point. One of the pieces of advice I was going to give, and I'm glad to hear that you're already doing this, is are you able to find larger networks or membership organizations if you're able to become a preferred provider for state education agencies where there are Head Start programs or other places like this, so that it becomes a greater reach on there as well. I also wonder about figuring out exactly which states are the best ones for you to work with. Which ones are the ones that make it easier? And there aren't really others doing this too much. And figuring out this tech. And I just feel there's a real opportunity there as folks start hearing about this. And I feel there's going to be good word of mouth. And how do you continue to build that on there?
As Jaime-Jin continues to scale, looking to these networks of providers will be a great focus. It will help alleviate the need to do door-to-door marketing to reach more customers. Jaime-Jin, thank you so much for coming on the show to share your pitch. Jin-Soo, we appreciate you joining us as a mentor. A few key takeaways to leave you all with from this episode.
My mother is definitely not only the matriarch of our family, she's the matriarch of our community. It's very inspiring, and I feel very grateful to have been raised in this way and by someone who's so loving and caring.
As a society, we need to stop undervaluing care. We need more Mrs. Donnas in the world, and we need to respect and properly compensate for the work they provide.
Jaime-Jin, this is an unprecedented global pandemic. Do what people need to be of service, and if we all survive this thing, we'll figure out what's going on with wiggle room after that.
What can you do to be of service? We don't all need to wake up every morning with a grand scheme to change the world. But are there small changes we can make that could have a positive impact?
Going straight to these folks to ask, like, what is it that you really need? Does it work? I think that co-building is so strong.
Especially if you are building a tech tool, remember to always design with your user in mind and get to know them as intimately as you possibly can. This has been Pitch Playground from 4.0. I'm your host, Nicole Jarboe. Learn more about Pitch Playground at pitchplayground.com. Like this episode? Send it to a friend who you think might like it too. Remember, voting will open June 15th to the 30th.